Dr. K, I'm a post-traumatic person and I'm obsessed with Law and Order SVU, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. I literally binge watch the show, watch it over and over and over again, fantasize about Captain Olivia Benson being my mom. I mean, I am a little bit more obsessed than the typical fan. I feel like this has something to do with my trauma, but I'm not entirely sure why. Have you ever wondered why are post-traumatic people so obsessed with Law and Order SVU? Do you have any show that you're really obsessed with and you're thinking, I think it has something to do with my trauma, but I'm not sure why? If that sounds like you, click subscribe below and you'll never miss another episode. Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. We're going to talk about all things trauma, parenting, and everything in between so we can understand it. So I got a message from a member of the post-traumatic parenting community saying, I am obsessed with Law and Order SVU. I cannot get enough of it. When the show is on hiatus, I seriously have to figure out what to do with my time. I will watch old episodes over and over and over again. I stalk the actors on social media. Like, it's just my obsession, that show. And it's crazy because I'm not even all that obsessed with other forms of true crime shows. It's only this show. Other post-traumatic parents will tell me, yeah, true crime, or this kind of, courtroom drama, cops, these kinds of shows, they just grab my attention. Does that have anything to do with my trauma? So we're going to do a different video about why do cop shows really grab the attention of post-traumatic people. But now let's just talk about Law and Order SVU, and let's also talk about Mariska Hargitay and the character of Captain Olivia Benson, because I think unusually for many actors, Mariska Hargitay has in many ways adopted some of the characteristics of Captain Olivia Benson, and maybe Captain Olivia Benson the writing of her was influenced by Mariska Hargitay in a very interesting way. She has really become someone who advocates for victims of child abuse, and really uses her platform not just to entertain and have a great show, but to really teach us something about special victims and justice. And I think that that's probably very unusual, but really important, because this show's been running for a really long time, right? Initially, Captain Olivia Benson, she wasn't a captain back then, was a, sort of bit character on the original Law and Order show, where it was just like she was coming in as okay, this particular, Law and Order just follows cops and prosecutors, and someone gets arrested, and then there's a courtroom, and then there's a courtroom drama, and then there's the lives of the cops and the prosecutors and how they intersect, and this was just like a bit character in one episode. Like, one time the crime happened to be a kid being, as opposed to somebody's wallet being stolen, home invasion where someone's murdered, someone embezzling this time. And what happened was that episode was so popular that they created a spin-off series around it. Why? Why is this particular aspect of crime so attention grabbing? I think it speaks to trauma and traumatized people. First of all, for a lot of us post-traumatic people, the notion of justice, of someone who is a passionate advocate for justice, who is going to go after the bad guys and hold them accountable and make sure that there's redress and that a crime does not just go unpunished and unacknowledged, but it will be not just punished, because the punishment doesn't necessarily help the person who was victimized, right? But this really happened. It wasn't okay that it happened. Someone needs to be held accountable because it happened. How many of us post-traumatic people went through trauma and those three aspects of justice never happen. First of all, there's all that gaslighting, particular when it comes to special victims, right? And being assaulted, being attacked. It doesn't matter which form, the amount of gaslighting, both gaslighting from outside the world, like, she was asking for it, never happened. People say all the time nowadays, nah, right? She's just copying what she saw on TV, right? So there's all of that that comes in from the outside world. And then there's that self-gaslighting, particularly when it comes to child, where usually it's not stranger danger and it's not stranger assault, right? Usually what happens is there is a child abuser who, in a very savvy way, trains the child to ignore their own instincts and ignore that little uh-oh voice in their stomach, as Gavin D. Becker puts it, this little uh-oh voice in their stomach that says, yeah, this isn't okay. And slowly and surely, let's say first they're putting a kid on their lap, and then the kid is trying to squirm off, or they hold them there just an extra second. And then they're laughing and friendly and kind, and the kid's like, wait, that was weird. Was it weird? Was it okay? Was it not okay? And they don't even have the words to explain that something felt off. So the next time, maybe they're going to tickle, and they're going to tickle a little bit more until they lower the kid's guard, because the kid's like, well, I feel uncomfortable, but everybody's laughing. Everybody seems to think everything's fine. So maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, maybe I'm overly sensitive. And slowly and subtly, that abuser lowers those signals. So by the time they actually get to like the kind of that we all agree, like, that was not okay. The kid doesn't even know to trust their own instincts. They don't even know how to trust their own little uh-oh voice, because that child abuser very mindfully, deliberately, and consciously shut that voice off. When you have a Captain Olivia Benson who comes in and says, it's not okay that happened to you. Doesn't matter that you were drunk. Doesn't matter how you were dressed. Doesn't matter that he's the principal of your school. Doesn't matter that he said nobody would believe you. You did nothing wrong. That did so happen to you. It wasn't okay. You were right. It wasn't okay. Now we're going to hold somebody accountable. For many, many of us, a lot of various forms of abuse, and it doesn't necessarily have to be abuse. It could be narcissistic abuse. It could be sibling abuse. It could be a toxic boss. There's so many ways that people get us to lower our internal signals until our internal signals break, and then we self-gaslight. Did that happen? Am I too sensitive? Am I sure? Should I make a fuss about this? If I make a fuss about this, people will make fun of me. I might be shamed. Maybe people won't like me anymore, right? And the gaslighting from the outside world. Oh my gosh, you work for him. He is such a philanthropist. He gives so much money to charity. Wow, he's wonderful. But you're like, yeah, but he's a jerk to me. And that gaslighting from outside people and that inner gaslighting. And what Captain Olivia Benson does is really cuts through the gaslighting. So for those of us who are gaslit in any way, like I said, it doesn't have to be, but for those of us who are gaslit, when you watch somebody speak with clarity and cut through that, it feels really validating, right? Like somebody really can see, not me, but the kid on the screen, but it feels like somebody could see me. And if Captain Olivia Benson would be talking to me, she would say, that wasn't okay what that kid did to you. That was not okay. And like I said, it could be bullying. It could be anything. That wasn't okay. And we're going to hold them accountable. So because of how many post-traumatic people have gaslighting as part of their traumas in so many ways, because so many traumas include an element of gaslighting. That wasn't so bad. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off and move on with your life. Gaslighting. When we see somebody undo gaslighting, it feels really comforting and supportive. And we just want to see it more, eat it up with a spoon, because it seems so like, wow, I never got that. But I can vicariously watch that little kid get that, and my inner child feels a little comforted. Sit with that for a minute and think about if your inner child really likes watching justice happen on that show. So that's one reason why many post-traumatic people are obsessed with Law and Order SVU. The second reason that many of us are obsessed with Law and Order SVU comes from Mariska Hargitay herself and the way in which she inhabits the role of Olivia Benson, because it's very clear that she's not just acting. She believes that this is a mission. She is really contributing something to the world by embodying what Olivia Benson stands for. And for a lot of post-traumatic parents who didn't have a protector role model as a parent, maybe a parent who was so preoccupied with other concerns that they really missed the trauma that this child was going through. Maybe a parent who was such a people pleaser themselves that they didn't stand up for their child. Maybe a parent who themselves was abusive, and not only were they not a protector, they were the abusive person that the child needed protection from. So then it's like fantasizing, like, wow, imagine if Captain Olivia Benson was my mom. And imagine if I would tell her this problem. What would she say to me? How would she support me? What would she do in this situation? I have another video about finding your parenting spirit animal. And a lot of post-traumatic parents talk about one of the very common parenting spirit animals where we say, find any person from fiction that is the parent you wish you had had. A lot of people say Captain Olivia Benson because they're looking for a protective parent who has clarity and who's willing to go to bat for them, right? Who's willing to suffer themselves to get justice for this kid, to advocate for this kid, to make sure that things happen for this kid. So the second reason why post-traumatic parents really love this show is because watching Mariska Hargitay play Captain Olivia Benson and really inhabit that role gives us a model for how to be a protective parent. Because one of the things that attachment does for us is it provides us with an internal working model. This ability to look at the world and understand it as it is. This is what I should do in this situation. This is what I should do in this situation. You know, it's sort of like when you grow up and you have certain assumptions about the world based on how you were parented. Like, let's say Wednesday is pizza night. So I have a friend who, one time was telling her mother, what she's serving her kids for dinner that week. And she said, and of course, Wednesday is pizza night. And her mom's like, why? So she said, what do you mean? When I was growing up, Wednesday was always pizza night. So her mother said, yeah, but do you have a pizza store in your town that has a buy one, get one free when it comes to a pie of pizza? So she's like, no. She's like, yeah, Wednesday was pizza night in our family because Wednesday, Rocky's Pizzeria had a buy one, get one free deal. So it made sense to make pizza night be Wednesday because we had a lot of mouths to feed and not the greatest budget. So that was the most economical way to do pizza night. But for my friend, it was just sort of this rule in the world. Wednesday is pizza night. Like, that's when you eat pizza, on Wednesdays. That's an internal working model. Like, pizza must be eaten on Wednesdays, right? Now, that's a cute and funny story. But when you know that your internal working model is broken because you didn't experience that normative, regular, typical childhood, a childhood where the parents mostly were doing their job as parents, then you need someone to teach you that internal working model. So in a post-traumatic parenting class, I remember a mother saying how she just didn't know what a balanced meal was. Like, what do you actually serve children for supper? Because she grew up in abject poverty. And like, if she got a scrap of bread for supper, that was amazing. So what's supper? Is an orange supper? Is toast supper? Is a bowl of cereal supper? Is chicken and rice supper? Like, what is meant to be for supper? What's a balanced meal? How does a parent figure out what to serve? How much food is the right amount of food? And I have news for you, even those of us who had a more normative childhood, more privileged, I certainly didn't suffer hunger in my childhood. Haven't fully cracked the supper code. Like, I think I have a great supper that has everybody's, desires and preferences and nutritional needs intact, and then nobody wants to eat it. So just like a newsflash, I still haven't quite cracked that like perfect food that like everyone's going to eat and like, and it will be healthy and everybody, and it's not going to break the bank. Like, I haven't quite figured it out yet. I have fairly good, I think I serve my children fairly good, fairly healthy, fairly balanced meals, but I don't think anybody really cracked that code. If someone has, feel free to message it in the comments. If someone knows a food blogger or someone who's figured that formula out to a T and it will work for my kids, let me know. That being said, sometimes we don't know what's normal and we know our internal working model is broken, but we don't know what, so we know what not to do. We don't know what to yes do. So when a post-traumatic parent who had a emotionally abandoning parent, who had a parent who didn't protect them, and that's why they were traumatized, will watch a show like Law and Order SVU to see what a protector looks like so that they can embody protector for their own children. So I think the second reason why so many post-traumatic parents love Law and Order SVU is I don't have an internal working model around a protector. That's a protector. That's a protective parent. I want to embody some of that energy in my parenting. The third reason why Law and Order SVU lands so well with post-traumatic people is Mariska Hargitay herself. And I think the fact that she really lives the role outside of the studio. She advocates for charities. She's testified about the impact of child sexual abuse. She's worked with a lot of nonprofits. She raises awareness. She raises consciousness. She speaks on the topic. She's educated herself to an extent that usually you only see like a mental health professional really understanding. Her testimony, where she talks about how child abuse derails psychological development, is a perfect analogy for what child abuse does to the psyche. And I'm going to do an entire video just on that analogy from her testimony, where she said it derails that person, because it's true. It takes a train that was traveling from developmental station to developmental station to developmental station, and it takes that train and it puts it on a slightly different track. And that track for a little while looks like it's parallel to the track the other kids are on, but slowly but surely they start to pull apart. And the other kids are going to like the station of learning how to read, and they're going to the station of, learning social nuances. And this train is going on the PTSD, from PTSD to PTSD to PTSD. So by the time this kid gets to adulthood, they've punched their ticket at all these stations, and now they're psychologically resourced and ready to parent. This kid went from PTSD to PTSD to PTSD to PTSD, and maybe that came with symptomatology and difficulty with others and all sorts of other complex trauma symptoms. And they started out in the same place, but yeah, there was a derailment. She gets that. It's not just the part she plays on TV. She gets that. And when we watch that show, there's something about being gotten that feels very, very good. We all want to be seen. We all want to be felt. Mariska Hargitay makes any survivor of any child abuse, it doesn't have to be abuse. It could be any form of gaslighting. It could be any form of PTSD or bullying. She makes that inner child feel very, very seen, very, very believed, very, very felt, and very, very trusted. A fourth reason why I like Law and Order SVU that isn't necessarily about a post-traumatic parenting aspect, but is more the clinical psychologist in me. She really models on the show Captain Olivia Benson's own PTSD and how she copes with it, and how she goes to therapy. And sometimes she gets mad at her therapist, and sometimes she lies to her therapist, and sometimes she doesn't fully tell her therapist everything. And sometimes she puts off going to her therapist because there's something difficult that she doesn't quite want to talk about. And sometimes she has successful dating experiences, and sometimes she doesn't, right? There's something about watching a character who is strong and resilient and powerful and is an exemplar of a protective person who provides justice, but still is coping with PTSD. And that the fact that she has some damage doesn't make her damaged, right? The fact that she has PTSD doesn't make her a deficient person in any way. PTSD, like I always say about myself, is how she functions, not how she dysfunctions. And you can really get to see that. And you can really get to see those, scenes of therapy, of telling people how helpful therapy has personally been for her. That as a clinical psychologist, I've got to say, yes, good job. Exactly. Because we need to see more of that. We need to break that stigma. It needs to be out there in the world. Therapy helps. Trauma hurts. Therapy helps. And we can indeed cope with our trauma through the use of therapy, through the use of support, talking it through, right? And figuring it out. She's also, fifth reason why Law and Order SVU resonates with post-traumatic parents is in the show, the character, Captain Olivia Benson, is a post-traumatic parent. She is raising a child that she adopted, and she's doing that around her flashbacks and around her trauma and around her highly demanding job. And she's grappling with his needs, and sometimes he wants her, but she's not available. And she's dealing with all of that. Sometimes she's worried for his safety because she's just seen something really horrific on the street, and she copes with that. And we get to watch her cope with that. So for these 5 reasons, Law and Order SVU really resonates with post-traumatic parents. If you're a post-traumatic parent and you have a question about this, if you wish that this video was a talk show and you could call in, if you were yelling at the screen in agreement or in disagreement, and you wish you could talk to me directly, guess what? You can. You can comment below and I will answer your comment. You can also find the post-traumatic parenting community. We hang out on Instagram at Dr. Kozlowitz Psychology. I go live most Thursday nights and we talk about all things trauma, psychotherapy, parenting. And you can also check out, if you like long form audio content, you can check out the Post-Traumatic Parenting podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, feel free to DM me, message me, comment below, and let me know what you thought of this video and what you'd like me to talk about next. Till next time.